time, yes, I'm not making a mistake, to give the floor to Jim Bergin. So as I told you before, he is the Chief Executive Officer of Glanbia, this very large Irish cooperative. Jim is going to talk about prospects and milk production after the quota system. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to walk around a small bit, if that's okay. I suppose I have three selfish reasons for being here, first of all. The first was to introduce my company, which is Glanbia Ingredients Ireland Limited, and I'll explain how that fits into the overall structure later. The second, I suppose, was to convey the Irish message that we're open for business and available to sell milk in the future. And the third one is a very selfish reason, and that is to support my representative in Italy, Paolo Panate, our PNP, who is a very good guy and is available also to sell plenty of dairy products in what is a deficit region. So the history of Glanbia, I suppose, at this stage is interesting to some people because it has been referred to as a hybrid structure and is the mix of a cooperative and a PLC. And now, in Irish terms, it's actually a mixture of a cooperative, a PLC, and a joint venture to embrace the growth of our farmers and the Irish growth that is projected. So I'm going to give you a small bit of history first. Two co-ops began in the late 60s, Avonmore and Waterford. And they grew until 1984, and then the quota system came in, and it limited the ability of those organisations to grow because milk was capped. So both organisations decided to go PLC. So they transferred their businesses from the cooperative into the PLCs, and the PLCs became the operating businesses for the co-ops. And then in 1997, these two organisations that had €1 billion turnover each merged. It was a very, very complex and painful experience, and it meant that from 1997 until about 2001, the organisation went through a very challenging restructuring, didn't have a lot of cash, had to sell a number of businesses, destroyed pretty significant amount of value within that period. And then in 2001, the strategy was developed for us to become a nutritionals business. And the anchor for this was that we had invested in the US, particularly in Idaho, where milk was growing at 10 to 13% per annum. And also there was an advantage in having very large cheese production units that could produce cheese curd at low cost for the growing processed cheese industry. So today we have two of those. We produce 480,000 tonnes of cheese in the Glanbia group in total. And the majority of that, more than 400,000 tonnes, is in the US. But more importantly, we developed the whey. And I was very interested in the debate this morning and discussions I had with some of the GIA representatives last night. So for many years now, maybe 15 years, we have developed the whey capability in the US. We developed it as an ingredient, first of all, and fractionated the product and developed some technology around that. And then in the last number of years, in the last 5 years, we have acquired businesses that gave us access to consumer markets. So we purchased a business called Optimum Nutrition, which is one of the best known brands of nutritional products in the US, first of all, and now spreading globally. And we also bought a business called BSN, which is complementary to it and in parallel, again, one of the better known brands in the US and spreading globally. So effectively we have moved along the chain all the way to retail, and now we are in the branded nutritional space. So, and that has driven, obviously, and I'll give some examples of this, but it has driven very, very significant value then within the group and obviously in the share price. So that is a very quick history of the Glanbia group. One of the issues always is that there's a debate between milk price and the profitability of a PLC. And that issue certainly was always there. In 2009, it challenged us because at that time we had a profit warning. Because my business, which is this business over here, Glanbia Ingredients Ireland Limited, had a very bad year. Our farmers had a very, very bad year, and it challenged the value of the organisation overall. So in 2010, we attempted to create a joint venture, or an independent business actually, where we transferred this business and 2 others into the co-op. But it wasn't successful. Our farmers disagreed. So 2009 was the stimulus for that potential transaction. But then in 2012, we repeated the exercise, but this time we restructured by the PLC selling 60% of this business into the co-op. And there are 2 very important reasons for it. One, the market wasn't clear on where the PLC was going to put its money. So it has these high value, high returning, stable nutritional businesses, and the market wanted to know, were we going to put our money into that business, or were we going to embrace the growth of 50% that will come in our Irish milk pool and invest very significant money into that, which is a lower margin, more volatile business. So at the end of it, it was agreed that we would carry out this transaction that created a joint venture, and it achieved those 2 objectives. So the market is very clear on where Glanbia PLC will put its money, and it's also very clear that there is a joint venture which will embrace the growth in Ireland, and therefore the group and the co-op achieved its overall objectives for its farmers. And the outcome of that was that when we started on the 23rd of April 2012, the share price was €5.50, the PLC share price. And as the significant owner at that time, the co-op owned 54.6%. And its value then was 880 million at that point. And by carrying out the transaction and successfully delivering on that and achieving the 2 objectives, the share price today is just about €11, and the value of the co-op, with a lower percentage of 41.3%, is 1.3 billion, and the value of the PLC has doubled and is now at 3.2 billion. So corporately, we're very, very happy with what has happened here. But to be very clear then about my role is that I am the CEO of this business here. And our CEO of the group, John Maloney, announced his retirement this week, having done all this, so it's a great time for him to retire. So that's a brief history of our structure and the value that has been created within the structure. So PLCs and co-ops can work together in various different ways. So then I come back to my business, and I hope that this will give you an understanding overall of the circumstances of an Irish company within Ireland, and also the circumstances of the Irish dairy industry. We have 5.5 billion litres in total in Ireland, which is the same volume as New Zealand had back in 1984. Now New Zealand have nearly 20 billion litres. A bit of our profile, first of all. We have 4,300 dedicated milk suppliers. We process 1.6 billion of the 5.5 in total. We have 30% of the Irish milk pool. We export and manufacture 180,000 tonnes of dairy ingredients. Our revenues in 2012 were just 700 million, and our profit after tax was 28.3 million. And we market into 50 countries, Italy being one of them. This is a map of Ireland, and effectively the 2 stars are our 2 processing facilities. And we collect milk in 16 of the 26 counties. Now, only a certain amount of milk in this area here. But the milk producing region in Ireland is down along here and across. That's where the good land is, and that's where the good conditions are. And the southeast has a very different weather pattern, even though we're a small country, to the rest of the country. And today you will hear a lot about fodder crisis in Ireland and people queuing for hay being imported from France and from England. But last week, in this plant here, we had the highest week's supply ever. And this week, we will break that record again. So it's a country of 2 halves in terms of milk supply. In terms of our markets then, and again, listening to the debate this morning, very interesting, and I actually was at a conference last week in the UK, and there were some similarities. When you have a huge consumer market like you have, it's easy then to understand why you have a debate about whether you will compete on the world market and allow your farmers and enable them to look outwards and to compete. But in both cases, I saw a debate which reflected huge internal consumer markets first, and then the focus. Ireland is completely opposite. We have a small number of people. 85% of our dairy production today is exported and has been for the last 40 years. Therefore, we're very, very focused on the world. And if you look at the density of our positions here, they're all across this band which is the deficit regions of the world in terms of milk production and milk availability. So we have 16 points, including here in Italy through Paolo. I've missed one here in Ireland, very important. But these are the areas. So about 40,000 tonnes of our product goes into West Africa, about 20,000 tonnes goes into the Middle East, and obviously a very large amount of our product goes into Europe, into many markets in Europe, particularly the UK because it's so close to us. And the UK, like yourselves, is a deficit market for dairy products. And the increasing focus is obviously over in the further areas here, which for many years has been supported by our businesses in the US. Very quickly then, I don't want to waste much time on this, but that's the range of products. So our plant in Ireland, the biggest plant, it processes 1.2 billion litres, is a site. It's one of the largest integrated sites in Europe, but it has 7 factories within it. And again, this is about draining the total value out of the litre of milk. So we have casein and cheese, and we take that all the way to WPI from the whey point of view, all on the same site. Obviously, Ireland has a big dependence on butter, but it's the number one supplier into the branded German market. Enriched milk powder is a very big product for us, and I'll focus on this a little later in terms of its potential. We produce lactose, majority of which goes into infant formula. So it's a very, very broad range of ingredients because we have had to develop ingredients for export. And these are the platforms that we follow. Infant formula, Ireland produces 15 and is increasing to 20% of the production of infant formula for the world. And obviously infant formula is a significant growth path. Affordable nutrition, which we call it, and this is our brand in Nigeria. Affordable nutrition today is about following the development of the middle classes in developing regions where they can afford and appreciate more nutritional value as we go. And functionality, and that's what we're focused on within that area. And then from a cheese ingredient point of view, it's processed cheese and cheese ingredients, again with a very, very broad range of products that can satisfy that. Retail in Ireland, obviously the Kerrygold brand, we're the biggest suppliers to it. We're the exclusive suppliers to the biggest cream liqueur brand in the world. And then this area here, which was again discussed at some length this morning about ageing, particularly about clinical nutrition, about people recovering from critical illness, and also sports nutrition. So within this category here, MPC, MPI, and WPI. They're the areas of focus, the areas of value for us, and very much a growth area for the future. So this slide is a very, very important slide, and listening to the debate this morning about volatility, not so much about sustainability or climate change. I regret that I didn't address the professor about the climate change issue, but also about how we support our farmers and sustain the economic viability of our farmers. So our issues began obviously in 2009, and our business at that time was very challenged. So we did 3 things. Not at the same time. The first one was that we took out about 20% of the cost base of our business because we needed to be able to survive again if we encountered another 2009. The second issue was to address volatility. And as I said this morning, my feelings are very strong about volatility. We weren't supported by the EU in terms of mechanisms to fill in the gap when the protections were taken from us. So what we did was we developed a volatility management scheme which went live in 2011. And it's a very simple scheme. We take no risk in it. We offer our farmers a fixed price for milk, which is indexed to the input costs, based on an independent standard for Ireland, the CSO, the Central Statistics Office in Ireland. So, for example, in 11 and 12, we offered our farmers 28 cents a litre for milk plus VAT, and an indexation for an increase in farm inputs, in all farm inputs. And the price ended up at about 30.5 cents per litre plus VAT. So that was oversubscribed by our farmers for 2011 and 2012. And we're glad to say that in 2013, again, we have launched a scheme. We have increased the price to a base of 30 cents plus VAT. And there are some riders in the current year because it's a very challenging year. But again, it has been oversubscribed by our farmers and has been met and satisfied by our customers. So all we're doing is actually tracking a path through this volatility, because our belief is that we can survive and live well in Ireland on the cost base that we have if we just plough a path through the volatility movements that happen and take out the extremes at the top and bottom. And blue chip customers across the world are of the same mind, because they're not necessarily looking for the lowest possible price. They're looking for a sustainable price. And if you're a marketing manager within one of those large branded organizations, you want to know what kind of a fighting fund you will have against your raw material cost. And if they have a level of certainty, they can then go to war with the competition. So there was a need both ways, and that has worked very well for us. And today, 45% of our farmers have 30% of their milk covered. And the last scheme that we introduced, it's a 3-year scheme at the moment, that scheme will take them beyond 2015 now, which is very important. We believe that scheme will develop and will broaden out into mechanisms such as what Charles introduced today. But the truth is that our farmers, the majority of our farmers, and indeed perhaps even organisations, are not used to doing that. So what we're doing is helping them to learn about managing risk in maybe a simple way. So that's the first element, and that's about economic sustainability. The second element is about environmental sustainability. And where this came from was I was at a meeting of the industry, of the processors within the industry, and the issue of carbon, this is about maybe 4 years ago, the issue of carbon was introduced. And one of the processors said, "Oh my God, who's going to tell the farmers?" So we better not tell them, because they would say we created this and it's something new and it's like quality was 20 years ago. And the second challenge then was that this thing was so unstructured, embryonic, dangerous, very difficult to get a handle on, as we say in Ireland, or to get a border around it. And also at the same time, we began to see large, again, blue chip organisations coming to us with a 50 to 80 page strategy on sustainability. And the only problem was that each one of these books was different. So how could we control that? So we decided that we would create our own sustainability programme. And in the belief that sustainability, both in the environment and in terms of resource management, is wholly consistent with good farming practice. And therefore we have progressed this in the same way. So we have an independent accredited carbon footprint, and we are independently auditing our farms for a broad range, about 9 sustainability factors that we believe that if they improve, well then our farmers will be better off. For example, if they control the use of water, if they reduce the use of energy, well then that's good from an economic point of view as well. So our offering then, from an international perspective to blue chip customers, is this. Apart from the quality of the product, apart from the innovations based on the previous platforms, the package that we are offering includes all of this. And large international companies are buying into it. This is just some substance, because a lot of people talk about it, and you know, there have to be achievements as well. So in terms of substance, the first thing was we achieved the IS 393 for energy management, and we were the first dairy company in the world to do that in 2007. And that morphed into the world standard. From the Carbon Trust, we received the gold standard in November and May for 2 different factories for management of carbon. At the Carbon Trust Annual Awards in the UK, we won the award for the best in relative carbon reduction, and that was across all industries. And finally then, in March of this year, we were given the Carbon Trust Water Standard. So again, we are the first processors in the world to achieve this. So we are focused on sustainability and believe in it, and believe that it can bring cost reduction, good practice, as well as being good from a consumer point of view. So then, hopefully the next section will give you an idea of the platform that we have to expand milk in Ireland. Again, we're looking at the demography and looking at the financial platform. So our farmers, we surveyed our farmers, got a 96% reply rate from them. Now, it was done in March of 2011, which was a very optimistic time at farm level. And we just take maybe some of the facts from that now, rather than some of the subjectivity that was there at that time. 4,300 milk suppliers, their average age was 51 years. 70% of them had successors. Of the ones who didn't have successors, 60% of them were under 45 years of age. Of the successors, 75% of those over 20 had training in agriculture, which is obviously becoming a more important element of the future. Now, again, we must understand we have had one hell of a boom in Ireland, and then we had one hell of a bust. So guys who were not interested in farming have all come back to the farms and are interested in farming now, because it's at least it's a lifestyle and it's a stable existence, whereas before they were in and out of jobs and couldn't guarantee employment. The borrowing level per cow, which many people look at in a bit of surprise, even Irish farmers, €1,000. And if you compare that with New Zealand, which remains on average probably pretty low at 4,800, it just shows that our farmers are in good stead. Now again, the current crisis and the long winter that we have had has increased that, there's no doubt about that. But it's still very healthy. And the last piece then, I suppose, which is exceptional from our organisation point of view, that as part of the restructuring that we did in 2012, we transferred 7% of the PLC shares to our shareholders. And our milk suppliers received 70% of that. So in total, our shareholders received shares to the value of 220 million, and our farmers received 70% of that. So they have those shares, and so far, despite even tough times, they haven't sold too many of them yet. From a farm income point of view, and this is just to emphasise why dairy is quite possible in Ireland, you can see that in 2011 and 2012, the income from dairy compared to any other enterprise in Ireland is out of sight. It's very, very far beyond any other enterprise. So therefore, concentration on dairy will happen. From a margin point of view, we're looking at the average margin and the average cost, and then we're looking at the better guys, the middle guys, and the not so good guys. So the cost of production in 2011 was about 23 cents a litre. And the margin for the average was about 13. And then you can see the top guys who are doing extremely well, they're below 20 cent, and their margin is over 15 cent, 16 cent. And these figures are taken from the National Farm Survey. They're independent of Glanbia. Again, a measure of potential is the level of investment that was undertaken here in 2007-2008 in dairy, and these figures that I have given here are dairy figures. So significant investment at that time based on a farm waste management scheme that was supported by government. And we would say that there is significant capacity in Ireland today in terms of milking parlours, even though all the providers of milking parlours and machinery and tanks are very, very busy. We then look at the capacity in terms of cows stocking rates and on a per hectare basis. And we have set Ireland here as the base. So Ireland is 100 in terms of an index, and we're comparing with Germany, Holland, Denmark, Italy, Netherlands, and the UK. And in each of the areas, in terms of potential, our litres per cow are the lowest, our stocking rate per hectare is the lowest, and our litres per hectare is the lowest. And our farmers would say that they were cut off in 1984 at a point where they had huge potential, and we have had a pretty rigid quota structure internally in Ireland since, and therefore the level of growth that was possible hasn't been achieved. So we have very significant growth potential then. Between 1975 and 1985, Ireland increased its production by 72%. And that was obviously off a very low base at that time. But it means that we have significant potential. Also, a high percentage of our farms are mixed enterprise farms, about 58%. Therefore, our farmers can move on the beef stock and can increase the cow numbers on the holdings that they already have. So therefore, they don't have to go out and buy land, at least initially. So that's the farming base, and then we look at maybe our plans. We can't tell you everything, obviously, but we can give you some signposts as to where we are and what we are planning. And one of the issues that we have to be careful of at European level is that people say the Irish are going to go mad and they're going to destroy the market and it's going to be terrible. But you have to put in context the size of what we have. It's big for us, but it's not big for Europe, and it's certainly not big for the world. So we have 5.5 billion litres. It's half of Europe production. If we increase by 50% it's 2.75 billion litres. The world requires 18 billion litres a year of an increase. So from that point of view, we're not big. Where we are probably slightly relevant is that 100% of this product will be exported. There's nobody to eat it at home. So that will have a certain impact. And then, I suppose, in the context of maybe the discussions this morning, we are strategically interesting internationally for a number of reasons. One, companies see the potential that we have to grow. Secondly, there is evidence over the last more than 20 years of 3 of the largest infant formula manufacturers have plants in Ireland themselves. And we're producing 15 and going to 20% of the global infant formula supply. Thirdly, I would say, and this is maybe unfair, but I'm saying it, it is deemed by global buyers now that there is an overdependence on Oceania. And that is because Europe didn't have potential. But now it does, and Ireland certainly does. Therefore, buyers and global buyers who are standing looking at a map and putting pins in that map in terms of their portfolio and where they will buy next, Ireland is very interesting. And finally then, our production is predominantly grass-based. In the south, it's almost totally grass-based. And for that reason, our costs and our production costs are very low. And we think that, even listening to the protein issue this morning, that the gap between grass-based production and grain-based production will probably widen somewhat. And the last element then is this is important to our country. So we don't have a huge manufacturing industry. All we have is tourism and agriculture and food. Other than that, we have a significant amount of foreign direct investment into call centres and Apple, as you may have heard, and all of that. But this is very, very important to our government and very important to our economy. And we have argued that there is no project that is as fundamental to the rural economy of our country as this. Because the economic multiplier in terms of investment and return in the rural economy is twice that of foreign direct investment. So therefore it is really, really important. In terms of our plans, I have already shown you a map which had our 2 processing facilities on it. And now we are going to construct a 3rd processing facility here in the south, which is the most intensive milk production field that we have. And this is a mock-up of our site. So it will be 2 7.5-ton dryers, built to infant formula standard, as most new plants are today. It's the first greenfield site in Ireland in 40 years, and maybe the only one. It's very, very scalable, so we can add more dryers if we wish to do that. And the quality and the finishes gives it great capability in terms of the range of products we can produce. It's a blending facility, so in terms of fats, vitamins, and indeed milk proteins, then it's capable of doing all that. So that is announced, and construction has commenced on it, and it will be available, fingers crossed, in the first quarter of 2015 for our milk growth. It will process 19 million litres per week. That's the capacity. And then finally, some conclusions and probably a small bit of a sell, but we're Ireland's leading processor. We will increase by 50%. That's an expectation. We have strong nutritional and functional ingredients. The new facility will provide very, very high quality ingredients. This comment is a general comment, but it goes back to the economic and environmental sustainability of our farmers. That we believe that ingredient supply chains are recombining. So we are seeing buyers who are interested in being on our farms and wanting to know what's happening with them, who are interested in volatility, which requires our farmers to come with us. They are interested in sustainability, again, requiring our farmers to be with us. And from a food safety point of view, they are probably reducing their dependence on intermediaries. So I would say that our innovation in the last 2 or 3 years is more to do with this than it is to do with product innovation. That's a theory. Some I'm sure will disagree with it. We have a proven volatility management scheme at this stage, and we also have our independent sustainability program. So we would hope and expect that we will build on these offerings, and that we will create a model which is pretty unique in the world from a supply chain design perspective. And I hope, Chairman, that gives some understanding. Before I finish, I'd like to thank Angelo for the invitation to speak here. I think he has created a great forum for discussion. This morning's debate was very, very interesting. And he also made me feel very much at home because it's been raining all day. So thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah.
Grazie Jim. Direi che è stato assolutamente interessante.
Thank you, Jim. Absolutely very interesting. Thanks. Thank you very much, Jim. Thanks. Absolutely interesting. It was very much interesting to see the organization of the cooperative and also product segmentation. Thank you very much. Very much interesting. Thank you, Jim. Now, thank you. As we are getting ready for the round table, I just give you a few pieces of information. The first refers to the documentation. You've got a form. We ask you to fill it in with your suggestions for the next forum. Please leave it to the desk, the front desk, to Marika, Mrs. Marika. Then, another communication. I don't remember, sorry, I forgot. Thank you very much. I'm really extremely satisfied. But this is the salt and pepper, or the sauce of the forum. Now Vincenzo Tassinari and dear friend Giuseppe Giuliani, Beppe Ambrosi, Francesco, Roberto, Casula, Elisabetta, Quaini, Fusarpoli, who could not join us due to some important problems he has in his farm, Michele Palzetta, because Antonio Baietta has got some problems. Fever, sorry, it's not due to your heart, sorry.
Allora lascio un pochino a te perché
manca una...
Ti manca?
Manca una sedia.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, manca una sedia Simone.
One chair is missing.
Andiamo vicino a Elisabetta là, dai. Vicino a Elisabetta là.
Elisabetta, please sit here. No, Antonio. The floor is yours and I listen to you. Sorry, I forgot him. I apologize. You were not here. You were not sitting there, right? I was looking for you. Are we all here? I want salt and pepper in this discussion. Tassinari is from Emilia-Romagna, aren't you? From Emilia. Yeah, but the blood is the same. Your wife is from Scortichino. So we are neighbors. Right? Fine. Now, the floor is yours, Antonio.